Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. It's the All Ireland football and All Ireland hurling preview this weekend. Obviously, both senior club football and senior club hurling championship finals taking place this weekend. We're going to be previewing both games, looking ahead to both games, giving our predictions, I suppose, laying our cards out on the table in terms of what we both think is going to happen. Joined by Matthew Hurley from the Gaelic Statsman podcast to run through this one and break through this one in a bit more detail. Matthew, how's life? How's everything else? Did you watch much of the football at the weekend? We were kind of chatting about the intermediate and junior finals off air there. I suppose two very good games, and I suppose great day out for Arva. I suppose they were the big talk sort of on social media and everything last night.
Yeah, exactly. So, and thanks for having me on again, Aaron. Yeah, all four teams, congratulations to all of them. Thomastown, Tulloch, Roscorbin, and then you had Arva, obviously, winning the junior, and St. Patrick's Cullyhanna winning the intermediate. From a car point of view, it wasn't really the best of weekends. Obviously, Castlelyons getting hammered by Thomastown wasn't great. St. Catherine's getting beaten as well by Tulloch, and then obviously Kilnamatra kind of threw it away in that intermediate final. They probably could have won it on any other day. 16 wides was a death by 1,000 cuts in that particular game. But St. Patrick's Cullyhanna, they took their chances when needed. Aidan Nugent took a brilliant goal. Jason Duffy was brilliant from midfield. And ultimately, they were just more experienced with Kilnamatra. But it was just brilliant that the car clubs actually got there in the first place. Kilnamatra, obviously, a village that is less than 1,000 people. So it's incredible the way they got there. And John Evans obviously was the talk of the country, really, with his interviews and all that. Castlelyons did very well to their own right. Again, did the intermediate final, obviously the 25th best team in Cork, going up against 13th best in Kilkenny. So obviously there was always going to be a golfing class somewhat. And more noting as well at the junior hurling final, Catherine's actually didn't win the junior championship in Cork. It was Aaron's own B team. So for them to go on and run to the All Ireland final is very, very good. In fairness, Dennis Walsh, the former Cork hurling manager, managing them as well. And but Listo Amos lost from Kerry and Arva. Obviously, a brilliant story. I've seen John McMahon's videos. Shout out to him. Brilliant performance by Kieran Brady. What can you say about him? Brilliant performance from midfield. And Hoffman in midfield, his midfield partner, was absolutely incredible. And it's brilliant for Cavan football in general to win a All Ireland championship like that, and for Armagh as well. And I know we're going to talk about the senior, but I think this will be the first time ever, if Glen win on Sunday now, it'll be the first time ever that one province has won all three levels in one season, in one club season. So history beckons on Sunday, and as well as that with the hurling, Kilkenny could win all three codes as well. Obviously, they won it previously in 2020. Ballyhead Shamrocks and two others in intermediate and junior. I think Tullerone were the intermediate champions, and there was another junior champion from Kilkenny. So chance to repeat itself for Loughlin Gaels there from Kilkenny. So yeah, history on the line for both codes really at the weekend.
Yeah, like it's interesting as well when you said that about the fact that White Graham's Glen, if they're to win this weekend, it would mean that you have all three Ulster teams winning all three club football championships, obviously junior, intermediate, and senior. Like, I suppose when you look at the overall picture of intercounty football as well, like you've got a whole host, I think 4 or 5 Ulster teams in Division 1, many Ulster teams in Division 2, obviously Antrim down in Division 3. And we've obviously seen in the last couple of years, like a lot of Ulster teams getting to All Ireland semi-finals. I suppose we've only had one Ulster winner who's won an All Ireland at inter-county level since 2014, and that was obviously Tyrone in 2021. But does it show that like Ulster football really is the dominant force at the minute, and there's no real disputing it? Like, especially when you are having so many All Ireland winners that are coming from Ulster, so many Division 1 sides at inter-county level that are from Ulster. And it seems like Ulster football is always on the rise, whereas other provinces' teams seem to dip and sort of go up and down, and you have your usual suspects. But it feels like Ulster is definitely the province on top at the minute.
It does in general. Like, even when you look at the top two grades of Division 1 and Division 2, the Alliance Football League, you have 7 Ulster teams, if I'm counting correctly. So I think the only two outside that are down, who, to be honest, most people would predict to go up from Division 3 to Division 2 this season. And Antrim, who are quietly fancied, obviously got to the Tailteann Cup semi-final last year. So even probably the less anticipated sides are doing well in their own right. Like Antrim is a prime example, put it up to Meath in the Tailteann Cup last season. And when you look at their club sides, I was actually surprised at how Arva really dominated Listowel Emmets in that game. Like Listowel Emmets, they're probably 24th, 25th best team in Kerry. Arva are a team from Cavan, but even when you look at Arva's team, I was thinking, okay, they could cause a shocker or two against Listowel Emmets here, but Kieran Brady was absolutely superb, and Tristan Hoffman beside him in midfield, and they just had a plan. They really had a plan. They were well built, they were structured, and ultimately they got over the line because their players stood up. And yeah, that was the difference on the day. St. Patrick's Cullyhanna from Armagh, the intermediate champions, I think it was mainly down to Kinlamatra's shooting. And on any other day, if Kinlamatra hit those over the bar, it would have been a different story. But I will say about Cullyhanna and a lot of Ulster teams as well, they're very smart in their play. Even the last play of the game, if you even watch the intermediate final, I think they held the ball for, I think, a full 3 minutes. And then they get the ball to Jason Duffy, puts it over the bar, 4 points between the teams. That's it, game, set, and match. And in fairness, they definitely proved that Ulster football is where it wants to be at the moment. And you look at Wally Graham's Glen and what they did against Kilmacud Crokes and even the teams down in the lower regions of the Alliance Football League. And yeah, Ulster football is in a very, very good state at the moment. But I will say this: it's very good from Division 2 to the bottom end of Division 1, really. But is it good for the middle end of Division 1 up? That's my question with Ulster football. Like Derry, granted, they have done well over the last few seasons, and they're probably one of the main favourites for the All Ireland alongside Dublin and Kerry. But can they produce it? That's the question. Donegal the same with Jim McGuinness. There's a lot of narratives around this. Tyrone and Monaghan are kind of stagnating a small bit. It's fair to say Monaghan have obviously lost Rory Began. Tyrone, very poor performance in the All Ireland quarter final last season. Armagh have the potential, but again, can they produce even more than that? And then you have Fermanagh and Cavan, the other two teams in Division 2, who are probably going to be at the lower end of Division 2. So I think Ulster teams are very, very good from Division 2 up to maybe mid-table in Division 1. But getting from mid-table in Division 1 all the way up to the Sam Maguire Cup, collecting the cup, I think there's a question mark slightly about Ulster teams. Like an Ulster team hasn't reached, well, Tyrone reached in 2021, but ultimately I think that was kind of a shock, kind of a season. But other than that, the last, it was Tyrone again in 2018, again, a shock kind of a season, reached the All Ireland final. Like, to be honest, the last Ulster team to reach an All Ireland final that were probably deserving an All Ireland final place was probably Donegal in 2014. I might get flack for saying that, but I just think that's kind of the way in Ulster football. If it wants to progress one more step, I think they need another Ulster team to really get to an All Ireland final and compete. And that's what they need to do in the next few seasons to assert their dominance in many ways.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was just checking there as well, like for Armagh, like it's the first time a Cavan club has won an All Ireland club football championship since Drumgoon in 2002, and that was also junior All Ireland. No senior side has ever won an All Ireland, and no intermediate side has ever won an All Ireland. So as you said there, like special day for Cavan football. Like obviously we saw our good friend John McMahon, who's obviously there as well, and you know he's not an Armagh man by any stretch of the imagination, but like even seen like a lot of the Ramor United teams and a lot of the Cavan clubs were welcoming Armagh when they came back to Cavan yesterday. So like it is quite a big deal like for a club like that, especially in a county that really haven't had much All Ireland success at all across club level, any sort of underage level, and county level across the last like 40-50 years.
Isn't it great though to see a whole county get behind a club like that? I wish it was the same like in any other county where you look at Mayo, Galway, Kerry, Cork. Like it is incredible when the whole county gets behind the team. And I've seen Cavan flags in John's videos up at Croke Park as well. And that's just brilliant to see. It really is. And Arva were recognised as heroes coming back to their home club, and understandably so. Like what a performance from them. Like they set out a plan, they executed it well, and they won the All Ireland in the end. And what I will say, it is great to get behind. Like, I've obviously got behind any Cork team that goes on an All Ireland run. Like, even look at Killamatra this year, or even St. Finbarrs 2 years ago when they played Kilcoo, I was supporting them, and obviously Castlehaven this year against Brigids. Like, honestly, I myself are from a junior club. I don't know what club Johnny's actually from. Well, I'm not entirely sure, but But I think he'd be the same as me, like shouting for any team in that county to rise the profile of that particular county. I'm sure you were the same with Kilmacud Crokes, and Seamus was the same as well in showing them on for the All Ireland last season. But for me personally, I'm from a club that is in junior level, junior A. That's like the sixth tier of Cork football, and that's not anywhere near senior standard or anywhere near even intermediate standard. So you show for these teams in general, like Castlehaven would be, for example, would be a club that would be kind of rivals with my club underage, but I'd still show for them because it does good for Cork football if they do well in the next few months. But it is amazing, actually. You cheer for them once they reach Crow Park, or in any county now. You cheer for them once they reach Crow Park and go on an order to run. But as soon as they come back into the county championship, we want to hit lumps out of them again. And you love that side of the club game, you really do. I'm sure Cavan football is kind of the same. I'm sure Cavan sides in intermediate level will be going for Arva's throughout now next season to test about in intermediate level. I'm sure Arva will do very well in intermediate level. And what this will do actually for the club in winning a junior title, it will promote them even more in the next few seasons. Like even a prime example down here in Cork, not agree, were the All Ireland Junior champions, I think in 2016, 2017. Right as of now, they're in the second tier of Cork football. And that's only just a small parish that's very tight knit. And a win like this would do wonders for those sorts of clubs. Even looked at Cork clubs in All Ireland finals in hurling over the last few seasons. Father O'Neill's and Charleville both were in All Ireland intermediate finals in 2018 and 2019 or 2020, around that respectively. And both those clubs are now in the top tier of Cork hurling. And they're there to stay as well. And I just think it's brilliant. Fossa is another example. Obviously won a junior championship, and they were so near to get into the senior championship in Kerry. Like what this does for a club, I think it's incredible. An All Ireland win, get that medal in your back pocket and go again for the intermediate. And it will give players a lot of energy. And Kieran Brady, he did play for Cavan over the last few seasons, but to be honest, before yesterday, I actually didn't know he was that good. He was incredible in that midfield against this limits. And you might say, okay, it's junior, but the fact he led his club to an All-Ireland win in Crow Park is just incredible. And I'll commend John as well for going up to support Arva or any person from Cavan, bring the Cavan flags. It's just brilliant to see. And it's what the club championship is all about, really, Aaron, isn't it? It's just brilliant to see. And it's kind of upsets me a small bit that a lot of people were actually focusing more on the pre-season competitions last weekend, the intermediate and junior club games, because club is what it's all about. And someone actually said to me recently, I think it was during COVID, 10% or even under that have the privilege of playing inter-county, 100% play club. And that's what makes the club championship so special in GA circles.
Absolutely. I suppose moving on then to this weekend, obviously, two more massive club finals, and I suppose it doesn't get much bigger than the All Ireland Club Senior Football Championship final. Watty Graham's Glen taking on St. Brigids. Obviously, Watty Graham's Glen, fresh off of that huge semi-final victory over Kilmacud Crokes. They beat Kilmacud Crokes 114 to 210, and of course, St. Brigids got over the line against Castlehaven 111 to 10 points. It's an interesting one. Obviously, like it can be difficult to predict these finals sometimes, especially when you don't have much to go off, like in terms of Glen playing St. Brigids. It's obviously the first time either of these two sides have come up against each other at senior level in a championship game anyway. So, like, what are you expecting? What are you thinking going into this final? Like, Glen will be the favourites, but at the same time, when you look at Brigids, you look at the younger players, you look at the damage and some of the teams that they've beaten en route to the final, like, Glen will be the favourites, and rightly so, but at the same time, I don't think anyone can say that this is going to be one-way traffic around like that. It's definitely going to be a game that's going to be fairly evenly contested, I would think.
What's going to be interesting in this game is the start of the game, because Brigids in the past few two games in particular against Corfin and Castlehaven, they started off like a train. And they were nearly hitting every shot over the bar. Ben O'Carroll was really on form in that Corfin game, and there was others that stepped up in that Castlehaven game. I think they scored 1-7 in both games. They definitely scored 1-7 against Castlehaven in the first half alone, and I think they scored 1-7 as well against Corfin in the first half as well, which was a brilliant tally. So I will say it's crucial for Brigids to get a start. But then again, look at the way Watty Graham's Glen started against Kilmacud Crokes. They started off again like a house on fire, and everything seemed to click at the right times. But I think, yes, the start is very important. The first half is very important as well. But what I will say, that kind of time between the 30th minute and maybe the 45th minute, the third quarter of the game, I think is going to be very important as well. Because we've seen in the Castlehaven game, Brigids flattered to deceive in that third quarter. Castlehaven could have easily gone back into the lead in that particular game, whereas Watty Graham's Glen held the lead up until the last few moments of that Kilmacud game. And I think they just took their foot off the pedal in the last quarter, and Kilmacud went all over them. And Shane Walsh produced a brilliant pass, and that ultimately changed the game. Nearly in Kilmacud's favour up until a mistake by the goalkeeper at the end. But I do think Brigids, it is important for them to start well, but it's important for them to keep the energy up until the third quarter as well. Because Watty Graham's Glen, no doubt about it, they're bound to start well too. They're a very, very good side when they get motoring. Like Conor Glass, once he gets motoring, he'll be a hard man to stop, and Brigids have to find a way to do that. And while we'll say the matchups is going to be important as well, I think Brigids, the forwards, they did very well in the game against Castlehaven. Brian Durbin, obviously Ben O'Carroll is an exceptional forward, and Bobby Nugent up in the forwards, Kieran Sugar at centre forward. But you look at Glen's defence the last day. Michael Warnock did an outstanding job on Shane Walsh. You have Ryan Dugan. I'm not sure is he injured or is he going to recover for this game? But if he is, that's an important player to have in the back line. Kieran McFaul at centre back is a brilliant player. You have the two Mulhollands and wing back bombing up and down the field, and they're as good as defending as they are attacking wise as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who Brian Stack goes on, because the obvious candidate against Castlehaven was Brian Hurley, because Brian Hurley, everything goes through him for Castlehaven. For Glen, there's not a particular forward that stands out for them. So it's going to be very difficult for the Brigids management to suggest who does Brian Stack go on. If I was to hazard a guess, Danny Talon possibly, Ethan Doherty, maybe even Ethan Doherty, because everything goes through him. Young player of the year for a reason. Maybe Brigids held Brian Stack, you're sticking on him for the whole game. It definitely worked against Castlehaven, and it worked against Corofin as well, with Brian Stack intercepting everything that went through them. But then again, and this is another argument to this game as well, Glen would have watched them two games, Corofin and Castlehaven, and they would be coming up with a plan, because Malachy O'Rourke is an outstanding tactician. Yes, the Brigids manager undoubtedly is a good manager too, and he's managed up and down the country. But Malachy O'Rourke is one of the best managers in the country. He will come up with a plan to try and deceive Brigids in this game. So I think Brigids, it won't be hammering, but I do think this is going to be the toughest test that Brigids have had all year. And this is coming from a year where they've had Boyle, Corofin, Castlehaven coming for the throat in each and every game. But Glen is going to be another step up for this Brigids side.
Absolutely, yeah, and I suppose it is a fairly young St. Brigids side as well. Like they have 4 or 5 players who are under the age of 25, so it's obviously a massive step up, and they're coming up against a very experienced Watty Graham's Glen side in terms of this being their second All-Ireland final. They've obviously won a couple of Ulster titles in a row now as well, 3 dairy titles in a row as well. Just running through some of the danger men for Watty Graham's Glen, like we know how good they're going to be in around the midfield with Emma Bradley, Conor Glass, Danny Talon, I think, has been very good. Ethan Doherty's been very impressive. But I think defensively as well, Watty Graham's Glen, that's been one of their key assets. And I think bringing back Kieran McFell, obviously him coming back from the States, obviously combined with Michael Warnock, who was filling in for Kieran McFell very much last year. But now you've got both of them in the same team, and you've pushed Michael Warnock back into cornerback. And you saw how Glen done against Kilmacud Crokes' attack. Like I know Kilmacud Crokes ended up with 2 goals. Obviously, both of those goals coming fairly late on in fairly tough conditions as well. But I think Glen's defence has been very, very strong. And as you said before, like although Brigids have been very good in attack, Glen have more than enough there in defence to keep them out.
And that's going to be the challenge for Brigids in this game, because we've seen what Michael Warnock is capable of when he came up against Shane Walsh. And Paul Mannion was relatively quiet in that first half of the semi-final too. And Ryan Dugan's probably an understated hero. when you think about it. Like in the third quarter, and I'll mention that was kind of after that kind of period in the game, Glen started to slump. And I don't know, is this a coincidence, but Ryan Dugan actually went off at the very end of the third quarter in that game. And then Glen started to lose their focus. And I think, yes, Michael Warnock's very important. Kieran McFaul coming back from the States is a quality footballer. Ewan Mulholland's in that team as well. And Carl Mulholland on the other side are very, very good footballers to their own right. And Conor Carville as well in the other corner. But I think Ryan Dugan and even the Kilmacud game probably epitomise that. He is important because he's a leader. He's a distributor. He's a very, very good man marker. He's a good defender, and he will get tough tight on these Brigids forwards. And I think he's going to be very, very important. Conor Bradley as well in goal. I think his kickouts are going to be massively important in this game. Obviously, the Kilmacud game, you could write that off because of the conditions, the fog. I don't think any goalkeeper could have seen it, to be fair to Conor Bradley and the Kilmacud goalkeeper on the other side. But for this game, I don't think there's going to be fog in Croke Park, so I think this is going to be very, very important, the kick-out battle. And Conor Bradley, in many ways, it's an understated job that he has in kicking out the ball because he has two-man mountains in the centre midfield with Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley. Probably the best midfield partner, well, not probably, is the best midfield partnership in the club championship that we've seen in a long while. So it's going to be challenging for Brigids to counteract that. I really think so in midfield. And you could argue as well, Glen have been good enough in the forwards and they can hurt you, as shown in the first half, particularly against Kilmacud Crokes. And the goal they got when they punished the Kilmacud mistake from Ethan Doherty, from the Kilmacud player, Ethan Doherty, went through for the second goal. But arguably, their midfield and their back line is probably the strongest lines that they have on the pitch. And I think if Brigids manage to quell that somewhat, I think they have a chance. But if they don't do that, if they fail to do that, I think Glen might just have a bit too much for them in this game.
Yeah, like it's going to be interesting, all right. Like, and I suppose Glen's midfield as well. Like when you look at the power of their midfield in Conor Glass and obviously Emmett Bradley, who's come back into the side, obviously was suffering from a bit of a long-term injury the past year. So, like that's going to be so vital as well because when you look at the power of their midfield, like it's a Rolls-Royce midfield, it's an inter-county midfield in many ways. Like, and I think for Brigids, like I suppose one thing you would probably say about this game is Glen are definitely going to have control. They're definitely going to have possession. And I suppose for Brigids, it's going to be just maybe picking their moments really sort of on the break in order to try and win this.
Definitely is, and the pace that they have in the forwards is going to be very, very important. Ben O'Carroll, Kieran Sue, Rooney, even their midfield has been impressive enough in this campaign with Shane Canan and Eddie Nolan in carrying the ball, in distributing the ball. They've been excellent in that department. But this is, again, I don't want to repeat myself now, but this is going to be an incredible battle between Shane Canan and Eddie Nolan and Emmett Bradley and Conor Glass. I think whoever comes out top in that battle will go on and win this game. And it's going to be a massive challenge for Eddie Nolan and Shane Canan. They're two inter-county players. They're obviously well used to the pressure of these sorts of pressure cooker games. But this is going to be a massive test for them. Like Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley are the two best midfielders in the country. So it's going to be very, very tough. And Brian Sack in the full back line is going to have a tough day out, I'd imagine, as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough day out for Brigids. They are pacey. They are young. They will get in Watty Graham's Glen's face in this game. But I wonder, yes, they do have pace, but will they stick with Watty Graham's Glen for the full 60 minutes? Or even for up until the end of the third quarter? Because it was clear in the Castlehaven game, I don't think they did. And that was a Castlehaven team that hasn't won the Cork Championship in 10 years. So imagine if you're coming up against a team that was in the All-Ireland final last season and was only in the Ulster, only coming across two games against Kilcoo and Kilmacud Crokes. So, yeah, it's going to be a very, very tough game for Brigids. It's probably going to be a tough game of their lives in many ways. And, yeah, Ben O'Carroll has to have a massive game in this. I think we talk about shot accuracies and all that. I think Ben O'Carroll has to hit the heights of, I'd say, 80% shot accuracy or over to win this game because he is the main forward. And if he's found, he will knock it over the bar more than likely. He did seem that way in the first half, whatever shot he got against Castlehaven. But then the second half, he's probably what's the word now, influence on the game started to wane in the second half. That can't be afforded against Graham's game, because they're an incredible side and they will eat you for breakfast in many ways if they get on top of you. So it's going to be a massive game for Brigids. It's probably going to be the toughest game of their careers in many ways, because obviously they haven't reached an All-Ireland since 2013. Brian Stack, one of the most experienced players on the panel, only played since 2014. So it's going to be a big game for these Brigids players. The question is, are they going to be up for the challenge?
Is there a what's the weakness, do you think, in White Graham's Glen, or what's the vulnerability? Like, because even when you actually look through the results, and like that like obviously they're in an All-Ireland final, but it has been very touch and go in a lot of games. Like, obviously 1 point win versus Kilmacud Crokes, 2 point win versus Scottstown. You go back to Niamh Connell, that was a 1 point victory. When they played Aaron's own Carrigan of Antrim, they beat them by 4 points, but even that was very, very close. You'd have to go back to Derry, really, where White Graham's Glen had a couple of sort of comfortable victories. And I suppose it shows signs of steel that they're able to dig these victories out, even in moments when they haven't been at their best. But what's the vulnerability, or what's the weakness, do you think, for White Graham's Glen, and how can Brigids exploit it?
I think their weakness, look at the team sheet, I think it's their forward line. Maybe there isn't a few forwards there that are prolific. Like, Brigids have a prolific forward, to be fair to them, in Ben O'Carroll. I'd look at White Graham's Glen and think Ethan Doherty's a good worker. He's a great technical footballer. Danny Talon the same. But I don't think they're elite scorers, if you know what I mean. Conor McGuckin, he did so in one game, to be fair to him, against Naomh Quinlan en route to the All-Ireland final, but he hasn't done so in many other games. And what I would say about the results there, and about the Aaron's own Carrigan game, actually well worth noting as well, Thomas McCann was sent off, I think, early on in the game, and they went on to win by 4 points. So it was actually tougher than probably the scoreline suggested in many ways. But it does suggest as well that White Graham's Glen played tougher sides than Brigids. Like, even looking at Brigids' run to the final, he played sides like Nord, Roscommon, I think Roscommon Gaels in the semi-final, and they were very, very comfortable in those sorts of games. Like, the only games in Roscommon where it was a touch and go in many ways was the Padraig Pearse's game and the Boyle game. The Boyle obviously have the Smith brothers and Dara Craig in their team, so that was always going to be tough. And Padraig Pearse has won the Connacht Championship a few seasons back too. So they were always going to be tough games. Mohill as well, obviously they have tough players. Corfin was a tough game in many ways. Castlehaven was a touch and go in many ways, to be fair. And look, even when you think about it, and it's important not to look at the scorelines here. Like, even in the Castlehaven game, if Rory Maguire, and it's if buts and maybes now, but if Rory Maguire stuck that goal chance, we could have been talking about Castlehaven in this final. So Bridges got away with them, one, to be fair there. Whereas I think White Graham's Glen, even when they were under the caution, Kilmacud managed to level it. They still bited back, and they still got back into the game, and they still got that crucial goal through Ethan Doherty to win the game in the end, and that showed guts. It really did. And it's worth noting in that semi-final too, between Castlehaven and Brigids, Castlehaven never led in that game, and I don't think in the latter stages anyway they didn't even draw the game. Kilmacud managed to draw with White Graham's Glen, but Glen still went out on top in that game. And arguably Kilmacud are a tougher team than Castlehaven. Well, not arguably, they are a tougher team than Castlehaven. So I'd argue that White Graham's Glen have had a tougher run to the final when you look at their opponents. But in terms of a weakness, I think it might be their forward line. But then again, you could have the argument that if Danny Talon doesn't perform, Ethan Doherty has the capability to do so. If two of them don't perform, Conor McGuckin could step up like he did against Naomh Quinlan early on in the campaign, or even Stevie O'Hara coming off the bench. And the bench is going to be important as well in the last few minutes. And I talk about the third quarter, the fourth quarter. I think White Graham's Glen have more on their bench than Brigids do. More threatening players. I mean, like Stevie O'Hara has done it year in, year out for White Graham's Glen down through the years. They do have good, like Kieran McFaul obviously came back from the States, and yeah, and that has even propelled their team even more. So yeah, it's a hard way to figure out how you beat White Graham's Glen, but I think the best way to do it is maybe to quieten down their forwards as much as possible. But other than that, it's going to be a very, very tough test for Brigids here.
And you can argue like Brigids have the players to do that, in fairness, with the likes of Ronan Stack, Brian Stack, obviously inter-county defender, and like they've got some experienced heads in there, in fairness.
They do, in fairness. And Brian Stark knew in the semi-final that the performance wasn't really good enough. And that probably just shows the sign of what Brigids are aiming to be. Like, even after a brilliant win in the All-Ireland semi-final against Castlehaven, he was saying to Tommy Rooney from off the ball at the end that we need to perform better if we're going to beat Glen in the All-Ireland final. And that probably just epitomises what Brigids' mindset is. They want the All-Ireland, simple as. It's going to be a tough test, but Bridges definitely have the right mindset to challenge them in many ways. And even the midfield in Eddie Nolan and Shane Conan, they're well able to defend too. So that's another two inter-county players to add. Rory Fallon's another good wing back to have in that team. So, yeah, I think they do have a good defence, Bridges. They have a good attack. I worry though about Bridges in the attack, really. Ben O'Carroll, Bobby Nugent, there's some exceptional forwards there, but once Michael Warnock goes on them, once Kieran McFaul goes on them, once Ryan Dougal goes on them, it's a completely different mindset then. And I just think it might be a step too far for Bridges. But I think it's almost a situation, it's almost like Limerick Hurlers, isn't it? You have to get everything right to beat them. Watty Graham's Glen are kind of that kind of a team, and they've been up with Kilmacode's level for a good few years now. They've beaten sides like Kilcoo, Scottstown, Kilmacud, Crokes. Like, these are just, bitsy teams in club level. These are top level club teams, and Watty Graham's Glen have beaten them all, and they've done it pretty. Like, they've beaten Schlockneil as well, and let's not forget that's a Schlockneil team that has Chrissy McKay, Brendan Rogers, Shane McGuigan in their panel.
Yeah.
So, like, they have come across battle after battle after battle. And I think Glen will be definitely up for this game, but it's kind of a situation with Brigids. They can win, but I think they need to get everything on point, on perfection, if they're going to win this game. If they're going to have any chance in Croke Park on Sunday, they need to get nearly everything right.
Yeah, like I think from a Brigids perspective, like from watching them against Castlehaven, like what impressed me to begin with was their explosiveness, and they have started a lot of games very fast. As you've said before, maybe they faded a little bit towards the end of matches, and I don't know if that's because they've had a big lead and they're trying to see the game out and they're trying to manage the game, and they are, as we've said before, quite an inexperienced team in some ways. So it's about, I suppose, fine tuning that the more you go on, but their explosiveness in attack is very impressive. We saw what Ben O'Carroll can do in a Roscommon jersey. We saw how impressive he was versus Castlehaven. Brian Derwin was very good as well. Bobby Nugent was very good. So they do have a lot of ways to hurt Glen. As you said, Glen certainly have the defenders there in Michael Warnock, in the likes of Kieran McFell, Colin Mulholland. Like, they've got enough defenders there to shut Brigids down, but at the same time, Brigids do have a lot of explosiveness. And if they can start fast, start strong, get under Glen's skin, because at the end of the day, like, all the pressure here is going to be on Watty Graham's Glen. Like, the pressure isn't going to be that much on Brigids, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, Glen were in the final last year. They've taken out the All-Ireland champions, and like, maybe that could, that could flourish for Brigids in some ways, and their players could play with a lot more freedom.
Maybe so, but it could also, jangle the nerves a small bit in many ways. Like, I go back to the 2021 All-Ireland hurling final, and a lot of people were saying Limerick could have win this game, and people had the argument that Cork, there was no pressure on them. They are going to be fine this final. And then a few minutes into the game, the confidence starts to wane, and the game's over, just like that. And I think there could be that kind of a situation in this game, but then again, there could be, I don't know. It's almost like, actually, when you think about it, both inter-county finals, they were kind of polar opposites when you think about it. And this is kind of the way this game could go in many ways. In the hurling final, Cork, the no pressure tag, it definitely waned heavy on them. And they sunk under the pressure as soon as the ball was thrown in and the game was over completely. But when you look at it in contrast to the football final with Mayo and Tyrone, Mayo were going hot favourites in that game, obviously after beating one of the best sides in Gaelic football history, Dublin. And then the pressure just got to them. This froze. And Watty Graham's Glen could easily do that. They're a very good side, and they've beaten a lot of teams like Kilcoo, Scottstown, Kilmacud, etc., etc., etc. But they could do a Mayo on it. They could just freeze. And then it's like Tyrone in that case in 2021, like Bridges now on Sunday, could come in and ambush them. And that could be the case too. That is a very valid argument in fairness. Do I think Watty Graham's Glen have the temperament maybe of Mayo teams? I don't think so personally. But it's always possible. It is possible. Everything's possible in sport. That's what makes sport so enjoyable in many ways. And Brigids, they might go in as underdogs, but it's how you deal with that underdogs tag. Do you deal with it in the Cork way, where you just fold under the pressure, or do you deal with the Tyrone way, where you just calm down, you go along your business, and you ambush the favourites to win the final? It's Brigids' choice. I think Brigids are capable of doing the Tyrone route more than the Cork route. They've that sort of aura about them. But I just feel like, again, Glen are just such a good side. And they haven't crumbled under the pressure so far against some very, very good sides, such as Scottstown, Shlockneil, Kilmacud, Kilcoo last season, Naomh Quinnell this season for Donegal. They have gone after battle after battle after battle and won every game. So I just feel Watty Graham's Glen will have enough in this game, but it is a valid point that Brigids could ambush them on any given day, and Glen could easily fold under the pressure that is possibly going to be exerted on them on the day.
Yeah, so in terms of a prediction, then you're edging towards Watty Graham's Glen. Like, what do you think the margin of victory will be? How do you think the game will go? I mean, could it be low scoring, high scoring? Like, I suppose finals generally are cagey. Fair enough, Glen played very well against Crokes. So there were, that was quite an entertaining game. And Brigids, we know, can play great football at the best times as well. But what are you thinking? What's your prediction, and what's the margin of victory?
I've said Watty Graham's Glen from the start of the club championship. I'm not changing my mind. Simply not, because they're that kind of a team. They go on their business. They're a very, very good side. In terms of margin of victory, I would say, again, I'd agree with you. I'd say it'll be a cagey final, because Brigids will notice that Glen's forward line isn't that good, and they'll try their best to shackle them in that game. But it could end up going back in Brigids' face, because then they would get the likes of Ben O'Carroll and Bobby Nugent to come back into the defence, and then they've nothing in attack. So I think it'll be probably low scoring. I think it could be under 10 points for one or even two of the teams. I think it'll be 2 or 3 points Watty Graham's Glen to win it, but it won't be hammering. It won't be simple as, because finals are cagey, and Glen will do enough, I think, to get over the line. But ultimately, I do think Watty Graham's Glen will win the game by 2 or 3 points, and it will be, as you mentioned there, a cagey affair, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Watty Graham's Glen as well. I'm going to go for a 1-point victory, but I do think it goes to extra time. And I do think Brigids will certainly have their moments in the game where Glen are on the back foot. I think we saw Brigids take out some very good sides this year, in the likes of Boyle, in the likes of Corofin, of course, earlier in the year as well. So, yeah, I would go for Glen to just about come true. Who'd be your prediction for man of the match?
It's a tough one. I'm gonna go Conor Glass. I know he hasn't performed in finals in the past few seasons, but I just feel, I was thinking about Michael Warner for a minute there, but I think the way the game is going to go, I don't think Brigids are going to attack as often. So I don't think the defence will be credited as much for Watty Graham's Glen. So I think it'll be around the middle third where the praise will be given. So I'm going to go for Conor Glass as the man of the match. Could easily be Bradley, his midfield partner, but I'm going to go for Conor Glass as the man of the match in the final.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Emmett Bradley was certainly the player that came to my mind. I think I probably would edge towards him. But from a Brigids perspective, you could look at Brian Stack, who could have a big game. Possibly Ben O'Carroll as well. But I think I'll go with Emmett Bradley as my pick there for man of the match. We'll move on to the hurling final, which is obviously taking place this weekend as well. St. Thomas versus O'Loughlin Gaels. St. Thomas of Galway, O'Loughlin Gaels of Kilkenny. Yeah, look, it's an interesting final, all right. It's certainly not the final that anyone expected a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago. I think everyone was tailoring up at the start of it, or the start of the club season, sort of in summer of 2023. We're all thinking Ballyhale, Ballygunner, the two teams to be. But O'Loughlin Gaels, as we saw, took out Ballyhale Shamrocks in Kilkenny, and St. Thomas took out Ballygunner in the All-Ireland semi-finals. So It's an interesting final. It's going to be very intriguing, all right, for both of these two. Obviously, long time since either one of these two won an All Ireland, so certainly a lot on the line. What's your general thinking going into this one?
In the football final, I would have said that I'm so confident Watty Gravesend will get over the line because of the experience that they have. This final is the polar opposite. It is a toss of a coin. It really, like you mentioned it before there, St. Thomas has knocked out one of the favourites in Ballygunner. And obviously, O'Loughlin Gaels did the same with Ballyhale Shamrocks as well. So, like, you cannot separate these two. Like, they don't necessarily have star players in the team when you look at it in an overall landscape, but they do have very good team ethics, both of them. Like, Thomas's in that semi-final against Ballygunner were just inspirational. Everything they had in that game, they gave it. Conor Cooney, he was brilliant in that game, inspirational in many ways. Evan Duggan, I think his name is in midfield, was very, very good as well. And obviously Victor Manso has been very good in the forward line for St. Thomas's. And yeah, they're going to have a very good game. And O'Loughlin Gaels, yes, the spotlight was on Thomas's beating Ballygunner in the semi-final, rightly so. But O'Loughlin Gaels came through a battle against Rory O'Cushendall as well in the semi-final, and they got through it. Owen Wall wasn't probably his best in that game. Mark Bergen was. And what I will say, the defence that O'Loughlin Gaels has, this is going to be tough for St. Thomas's now. You have Paddy Deegan, Hugh Lawler, and Mikey Butler. Probably the three best defenders, arguably, in Kilkenny. Never mind, like in club teams or whatever, in the whole county. So that's going to be a tough aspect for St. Thomas's to overcome. But honestly, Aaron, this is a toss of a coin. This final, I'm honestly, even though I'm struggling at predicting who's going to win this game.
Yeah, it really is. And just looking at it there, like O'Loughlin Gaels obviously never won the All Ireland before, last in the final in 2004. St. Thomas, they last, their only All Ireland success was in 2013. So maybe that might stand to them ever so slightly. Like, I suppose for St. Thomas, like the fact that they took out such a juggernaut in Ballygunner in a game, like I think everyone was, almost saying Ballygunner had almost already won the All Ireland. I think a lot of people were saying that for so long, considering St. Thomas were the ones to beat them and take them out. And I know it was via a penalty shootout. Like, does that not by default make St. Thomas the favourites? The fact that they were able to take out such a superpower and such a juggernaut that is Ballygunner.
You could argue the same with O'Loughlin Gaels beating Ballyhale. And that probably just goes in under the radar because of how early it was in the championship, and it was in October. And this was December where St. Thomas's beat Ballygunner. And you could argue as well, O'Loughlin Gaels beat Ballyhale after normal time. St. Thomas's beat Ballygunner after a penalty shootout, a lottery. There could be, I'm not in any way disregarding St. Thomas's now, but I think you could take it from that viewpoint as well. But like, they were very, very good in that semi-final, I have to say. Nobody expected them to go on and win it. Like, even when I was previewing the game, I think it was Seamus. I think it was actually you on the podcast when we were previewing the game between St. Thomas's and Ballygunner, and we were both so certain that Ballygunner would win the game, and we didn't think it'd be a contest whatsoever. And that probably just epitomises how much of a shock it actually was. A lot of people didn't think it would be a shock. And worth noting as well, St. Thomas's, before the Ballygunner game, their last competitive game, I think, was October for the Galway final. To get themselves up for a semi-final in that magnitude against Ballygunner a week before Christmas, I think that was incredible on their own right. And that was a very, very good performance. And they've had some standout performers. Obviously, Aina Burke in the full forward line was very, very good in that game against Ballygunner. It has been good in this club championship. Oisin Flannery as well, James Regan, Evan Duggan, as I mentioned there, got the man of the match award deservedly. So Vincent Burke as well at wing back probably hasn't had his best form in this club championship, but we know what he's capable of in that Galway, in the Galway team in particular. The sidelines he gets is very, very good and understated in many ways. And even other than the Ballygunner game, they've come through some very tough tests in Galway, like Turlough Moore, tough test there, 212 to 113, 2-point victory, a 3-point victory over Sarsfields. That was the two games before Ballygunner even. Okay, up until that point, they beat Gort, Portumna, Turlough Moore, and Capitagle very convincingly indeed. But those three games in particular against Sarsfields, Turlough Moore, and Ballygunner will bring them on fourfold going into this final. And they seem to score a lot, concede very little in terms of hurling averages. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they approach this game against O'Loughlin Gaels, who are normally a tough cookie to crack. So we'll see how this goes on Sunday. It should be very interesting game.
Yeah, like what key players do you think could be on display for St. Thomas to lead them to victory? Obviously, seeing a bunch of them shine, bunch of them stand out in the win versus Ballygunner. So, who do you think could be definitive in getting St. Thomas over the line? Should they do it on Sunday?
I think the two players in the forward line in particular that scored 20 points or over in this championship, Éanna Burke and Conor Cooney. I think you look at them two forwards and you think they're going to get goals or points here. Like, for example, Éanna Burke has scored, I think, 4 goals in this campaign. He might have got one against Ballygunner. This is the stats before the Ballygunner game. Obviously, coming out stats on these semi-finals on my page in the next few days. But Éanna Burke has been very good. He's a goal getter in many ways. Before the Ballygunner game, I'm not sure after it now, but before, 421 from play in the Galway Championship. And that just epitomises what a good player he actually is. Evan Duggan in the middle of the field is a very good player. Fintan Burke is obviously an exceptional member of Galway and wing back, and he's well able to take a sideline, as I mentioned there. James Regan's good as well. Damien McLean, Dara Burke. Like, they do have good players all over the field. But I think the main players you'd be looking at, 4 players in particular. Fintan Burke, Evan Duggan, Éanna Burke, Conor Cooney. If those 4 shine on the day on Sunday, I think they'll be hard to stop, St. Thomas's. So it's going to be crucial to see how they perform in this game against O'Loughlin Gaels. They have done in all the games so far in general. But this is the key one now. This is the All-Ireland final, and they need to step up for their club when counted.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose, like, for O'Loughlin Gaels, you obviously have Mark Bergen, who's been in phenomenal form, obviously going down the other end as well. But defensively, O'Loughlin Gaels have got a lot of players who could keep the likes of Conor Cooney and Éanna Burke quiet. I mean, obviously the one that stands out is Mikey Butler. Who do you think he could pick up, Éanna Burke or Conor Cooney? That would be the interesting one.
Going to be very interesting indeed. Then again, O'Loughlin Gaels, like, even if they sacrifice Conor Cooney with Mikey Butler, you could easily put Hugh Lawler on Conor Cooney.
I'm thinking that, yeah.
Like, it's just the abundance of talent that O'Loughlin Gaels have in the defence, which makes this game so interesting. And even the full back line, you'd be interested to see who goes on Mark Bergen down the other end. Like, he hasn't scored much from play per se, but he does knock over a lot of frees. I think that'll be very important as well for both ends of the pitch, for both defences not to concede stupid frees. Because Mark Bergen's going to take them for O'Loughlin Gaels with a plan, and so is Conor Cooney down the other end for St. Thomas's. Both players are deadly accurate in front of the posts. So I think Mikey Butler, Hugh Lawler, Fintan Burke, all them defenders on show will be told by their management, no stupid frees, because you're basically sacrificing a point there. So it's going to be interesting to see how it transpires. If I was a betting man now, I'd probably put, and I'll stress I'm not, I will put probably Mikey Butler on Éanna Burke. I probably, because of what he scored from play in this championship so far. Conor Cooney could be, he's not an easy player to take care of by any means, but I think he's an easier player than Éanna Burke. So I would say Éanna Burke is going to be picked up by Mikey Butler, but you could easily put Hugh Lawler and Conor Cooney, or you could, like, Paddy Deegan's going to be interesting as well. Will they get him to mark one of the two lads? Or will they get him to mark Victor Manso? Or will they let him loose like they have in the last 2 games, especially in that Leinster final against the Fianna? He was exceptional, scoring 5 points from play. So it's going to be interesting, the dynamics of this game, to see who goes on who. Will they leave Paddy Deegan go off free? Will St. Thomas's leave Fintan Burke go off free? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens on Sunday.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, I think when you look at the influence that Paddy Deegan had in the last few games, I think there certainly is an argument just to let him roam. But at the same time, as you said, maybe they do sacrifice him. But I do think they'll probably let him roam, in fairness. Going down the other end, Mark Bergen's obviously going to be a threat. Anyone else you think could stand out for O'Loughlin Gaels?
They don't have much scores, to be fair. They do have a very good defence. They have a very good team unit. But in terms of scoring, they haven't scored that much in this championship. Owen Wall is probably the one that stands out. He's got 3 goals in this campaign. David Folkley, Paddy Deegan actually before the semi-final against Rory O'Cushendall was actually their joint third top scorer, and he's a wing back. So it probably shows that they don't necessarily have top scorers per se, but they do have a team that will give it all for everything as well. Conor Heary, especially in the last few games at number 12, has been very, very good. Especially in the game against Kilcormac in the Leinster semi-final and in the semi-final of the All-Ireland against Rory O'Cushendall. He might be a player to watch in this particular game. Jack Nolan's a good player as well. Paddy Butler is decent as well. Conor Kelly, like Cian Loy, like they do have some good players, but I wouldn't say they have standout players. I think their standout players are the defensive line, Paddy Deegan, Mikey Butler, Hugh Lawler. But in terms of attack-wise or midfield, I don't think they particularly have standout players. But what they do have is a good team ethic and players that will die for each other. And I think that would be key for Loughlin Gaels to go on and potentially win this All-Ireland. But what I think is key as well is Mark Borg, and he's been exceptional so far in this championship, in the All-Ireland, in the Kilkenny championship, in the Leinster championship, at taking frees at the right moments. But he has to nail every one nearly in this final for Loughlin Gaels to go on and win it. So it's going to be crucial to see how that turns out. And yeah, I just feel though Loughlin Gaels don't have many standout players. They might not have that, but what they do have is a good team ethic and players that will work for each other really.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and it is interesting, like going back and looking at Loughlin Gaels, like they've averaged around 16 to 17 points per game, which is relatively low scoring, especially for a hurling side. So you do feel like if Loughlin Gaels are to come out on top, they're going to need Mikey Butler, Hugh Lawler. Like it's going to be those defensive battles that ultimately gets them out on top.
Definitely so, yeah. Even Mikey Butler, Hugh Lawler, they're the best defenders in Kilkenny, as I mentioned there. Hugh Lawler, like we talk about the All-Ireland semi-final about Mikey Butler going on Tony Kelly, and Tony Kelly getting the Mikey Butler treatment. Ian Burke, you have to beware of this now. You have to beware, pal, because Mikey Butler is going to be on your back. As simple as, because he's the sort of defender. He's not kind of your flashy defender that will go up the field and get a few points from corner back. He did get a goal of fairness in the Leinster final, brilliant taking goal against Galway. But he's not that type of player. He's not flashy whatsoever. He'll just do the job. He will stick to you like glue for the entire game. And I think if a person is marked up by Mikey Butler, that's honestly good night, because they're just not going to get a touch on the ball because in St. Thomas's case they aren't going to put the ball to Ian Burke, because what's going to happen is Mikey Butler is going to get a stick in front of him, or he's going to get out in front of his man. So it's going to be interesting to see if Mikey Butler does indeed pick up Ian Burke, and it'll be interesting as well if that does come to fruition. Does Conor Cooney and Victor Manso have more of an influence on the game if that is the case?
Yeah. So what's the verdict? What's your prediction? Very, very hard one to call. Could it be a replay? Could a replay even be on the cards here?
Most likely, to be honest, because both sides are going long without an All-Ireland. Both sides want it. Both sides are underdogs to their own extent going to the All-Ireland final, and both sides will give it 100%. This is a tight game to call, it really is. I wouldn't back against a replay, to be honest. I'm going to edge it to Loughlin Gaels. Going to edge it. I just feel their defence is tight-knit. Hugh Lawler, Paddy Deegan, Mikey Butler. I just think that defensive line will get the better of St. Thomas's in this particular final. But it's going to be a tight one to call, but I'm just going to edge it to Loughlin Gaels by maybe, and I think it could be a last-minute point to win this.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'd fancy them as well. I think they've just done enough in a lot of games, and what's impressed me a lot of the time is when they've been behind, they've found an answer, they've come from behind. They've done it against Na Fianna on multiple occasions. Obviously, we saw them against Ballyhale Shamrocks. They just have this knack of getting over the line and winning games, and I do think that's going to be what ultimately does get them over the line. And I do think it will be a relatively low scoring final as well for a hurling game. I think it could be something like 17-15 or 117 to 115, 118 to 16 or something of that nature. But I do think O'Loughlin Gaels will nick it. Man of the match, you'd edge towards a defender for O'Loughlin Gaels then maybe?
Yeah, I'm going to go Mikey Butler, because he usually performs when it's against the Crow Park, and I'm going to go for Mikey Butler to get man of the match. But if St. Thomas's win it, I'd say Evan Duggan might get it, but I'm just going to edge it to Mikey Butler in this one. He's just a superb defender.
Yeah, I suppose the obvious alternative prediction there for me would maybe be Hugh Lawler, but I think I'll go for Paddy Deegan. I think he can have a very, very big game, both defensively and going down the other way as well. So there you go. There's our picks, obviously, for the All-Ireland finals this weekend. Both going with Watty Graham's Glen, both going with O'Loughlin Gaels as well. Let us know your predictions in the comments down below. Let us know who you predict will come out on top in both All-Ireland finals this weekend. Matthew, appreciate you jumping on. Make sure to go and check out the Gaelic Statsman podcast when you get a chance. Hit the like button and subscribe for anyone who tuned in to the stream, and we'll speak to you all soon.